kid, she's fearless. She just plays. She just is like a little kid in, in a driveway playing with her friends. So, yeah, she's unique in that way. But in terms of what she's doing, people have short memory. Yeah.
They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But for Caitlin Clark, it was $1 million check she refused to cash. A public humiliation delivered with a quiet no that echoed louder than any sold-out arena. This isn't just about basketball anymore. This is the story they don't want you to know. The calculated takedown of a legend who let his ego write a check his legacy couldn't cash. For years, Geno Auriemma, the untouchable king of women's college basketball, has been talking. He's offered backhanded compliments, dismissed her fan base, and tried to frame her success as something he's seen a dozen times before. He tried to sound wise like a king looking down on a rising star.
Geno talked about Caitlin Clark again and sort of gave some backhanded compliments. Like he talked about how she connects to the audience, which was good. He talked about how she's tough, like Paige Beckers. He threw Paige in there out of his way to, first he's like saying she connects to people, and he could have left it at that, I guess. But he almost goes on to put the, reverse some of that discourse, try to put it in others' laps because of Caitlin.
People have short memories, he says, but Caitlin Clark never forgot. And now Geno is learning the hard way that when you try to diminish a supernova, you just get burned. We're going to connect the dots and show you how every single insult, every dismissal, and every condescending comment led to this moment. The moment Caitlin Clark didn't just reject a league, she rejected his entire legacy, costing him millions and humiliating him on a global stage. This is the story of the perfect payback. Stick with me, because the truth is always more dramatic than the game itself. The disrespect didn't start this year. You have to go back to the recruiting trail, back to when Caitlin Clark was just a high school phenom with a dream. And that dream, like it was for so many, was to play for UConn. She admitted it herself, saying, "I loved UConn. I think they're the coolest place on earth." So what happened? Why didn't the greatest recruiter in the history of the game sign the greatest offensive talent of a generation? According to Clark, the interest was never really there. Geno's program called her AOU coach a few times, but they never once spoke directly to her or her family. Geno's excuses have been a masterclass in deflection ever since. He claimed he had already committed to Paige Bucher very, very early and did want 2 point guards at the same time. Then, in a stunning display of arrogance, he tried to flip the blame, suggesting that if Clark really wanted to come to UConn, she should have called him. Imagine that. The legendary coach admitting he couldn't see the generational talent right in front of him, then blaming the teenager for his own oversight. It was the first slight, the first dismissal, and it would become the costliest mistake in the history of women's basketball. While Clark went to Iowa and built an empire from the ground up, selling out arenas and shattering viewership records, Geno watched from a distance. And instead of admitting his mistake, he doubled down. He began a calculated campaign of public commentary that always seemed to praise Clark with one hand, while undercutting her with the other. It was a pattern, a manipulative strategy designed to keep him in control of the narrative. But people started noticing. Experts saw right through it.
Beginning of the conversation.
The women's game. So I think sometimes people get confused over the last 18 months, maybe over the 2 years, that they think it was a rocket, that you all jumped on Caitlin Clark's back and went straight up. But you've been there at the beginning.
And then they have something good to work with, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. So it still comes back to those of us that are in charge of the game. Are we making the game better?
He couldn't just praise her. He had to throw Paige Bucher's name in there. A constant reminder that he was still the kingmaker, that he still had a star of his own. It was a desperate attempt to stay relevant in a conversation that was rapidly leaving him behind. Every time he mentioned Paige, it wasn't about celebrating his own player. It was about deflecting from the reality that Clark was transcending the very game he claimed to have built. He underestimated her, and now he was trying to put her in a box he could control. But Caitlin Clark doesn't fit in anyone's box. The verbal jab soon escalated into a full-blown attack. not on Clark herself, but on the millions of fans she brought to the game. In a now infamous interview on The Dan Patrick Show in June 2024, Geno Auriemma went nuclear. He called her supporters delusional, unknowledgeable, and so stupid that it gives women's basketball a bad name. His main point of outrage that these delusional fans had the audacity to predict Clark would finish in the top 4 of the WNBA MVP race in her rookie season. He dismissed the idea as pure fantasy, the ramblings of people who didn't understand professional game. It was an unprecedented attack. A legendary coach wasn't just criticizing a player. He was insulting the intelligence of an entire movement, the very people who were injecting life, money, and attention into the sport. But this is where the revenge story truly begins. Because Caitlin Clark didn't have to say a word in response. She just went out and played. And what happened? She won Rookie of the Year. She made first-team All-WNBA. And in the final MVP voting, she finished 4th, exactly where her stupid and delusional fans predicted she would. It was a systematic demolition of his credibility. Every single one of his criticisms, every arrogant dismissal, was proven wrong by her performance on the court. His attack on the fans now reads as one of the most embarrassing takes in sports history. He tried to position himself as the wise elder, the gatekeeper of basketball knowledge. Instead, he exposed himself as a bitter, out-of-touch man, clinging to a past that was quickly fading in the rear-view mirror. You see, Clark's success wasn't just a victory for her. It was a vindication for every fan Geno had insulted. He had drawn a line in the sand, and Clark's dominance erased it completely. As Clark's star ascended, Geno's obsession seemed to grow. He just couldn't stop talking about her. A clear sign that, as many have said, she was living rent-free inside his head. His desperation reached its peak in a shocking interview where he tried to take credit for the very movement he failed to recognize. He didn't just want to control the narrative, he wanted to own it.
Geno Auriemma could be the reason why Caitlin Clark is definitely not joining the unrivaled 3-on-3 basketball league. We finna unpack it all.
You all jumped on Caitlin Clark's flat back and went straight up. The disrespect is breathtaking. He frames the media, the fans, and the entire world as opportunists riding the coattails of a phenomenon that people like him, the ones in charge of the game, created. It's a stunning refusal to acknowledge that Clark is a rocket, that she is a force of nature that he and the rest of the old guard simply didn't see coming. This comment reveals everything. It's not just about basketball. It's about power. He sees this new wave of popularity, led by a player he rejected, as a threat to his authority. And that's the context you need for the final act of this drama. Geno Auriemma became deeply involved in a new business venture, the unrivaled 3-on-3 basketball league, a project that was supposed to cement his legacy as not just a coach, but a visionary businessman. It had big names and big promises, but it was missing one thing, a face. It had no star power, no magnet to draw in the millions of new fans that had suddenly discovered women's basketball. They needed Caitlin Clark. So they made their move. Reports confirmed that the unrivaled league, co-founded by Breanna Stewart and Faisa Collier, made a massive offer to Caitlin Clark, a contract with over $1 million for just an 8-week season. This was Geno's checkmate. After all the insults and dismissals, he was now coming to her, checkbook in hand, begging her to be the face of his project. He needed her to legitimize his league. He needed her to make him millions. He needed her to save him from his own miscalculation. It was the ultimate reversal. The man who wouldn't even give her a phone call was now offering her $1 million lifeline. And all of sports media held its breath. What would she do? This is where the payback becomes perfect. Caitlin Clark said no. That's the confirmation. She flat out rejected him. She turned down over $1 million. And in doing so, she didn't just make a business decision. She made a statement. The message was clear. She doesn't need his league. She doesn't need his approval. And she certainly doesn't need to boost the reputation of a man who spent years trying to minimize her talent. That single word, no, was a culmination of years of disrespect. It was a revenge delivered not with angry words, but with a quiet, powerful rejection that left his project dead in the water. Without her, the league had no star, no hype, no chance. Fans immediately saw it for what it was. the ultimate humiliation. Social media exploded, clowning Geno forever, thinking she would bail him out after he had so publicly doubted her. This wasn't just about money. It was about principle. It was a final devastating move in a chess match he didn't even know he was playing. He thought he was in control, that he held the power of comparison, that his words mattered more than her game. But he was wrong. Caitlin Clark's revenge was proving that her success was the only thing that mattered. She didn't have to stoop to his level. She just had to keep winning, keep breaking records. And when he came to her out of pure desperation, all she had to do was walk away. His insults cost him millions. His arrogance cost him his credibility. And his failure to see what was right in front of him has now cost him his future. His era is fading, and hers is just beginning. And now the question isn't whether Geno Auriemma regrets his mistake. We know he does. The question is, what happens now that his power has been so thoroughly dismantled? This rejection wasn't just a message to Geno. It was a warning to the entire old guard. The game belongs to a new generation now. Geno was the first to learn that lesson the hard way. But who will be next?